Welcome to the Dragon's Library, your source for games, movies, shows, and more. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Dragon's Library. And so today we are talking about a new book, Obsidian. Hey, so this is the dragon coming in after the fact. I just realized that I should probably give a warning before this. So, be warned, the magic system in this book contains descriptions of bloodletting and cutting on both the wrist and legs. If you are very sensitive to that thing, be aware that it is a major factor and plays a significant role in how the magic system works. Want to see that kind of thing, I completely understand, but I just wanted to make sure you were all aware. With that out of the way, let's get back to the review. Back in 2021, I was researching, so after 2021, I decided to start researching stuff. Check out what books were going to be available for the coming year. And I stumbled across this on a list of new fantasy titles, because I always keep my eye out in the fantasy and sci-fi genres. I know I haven't given sci-fi as much love. I plan to do some sci-fi books this year as well. Do not worry. I'm just a big fantasy nerd, so apologies for if fantasy seems like it overwhelms things a lot. But all in all, it looked like an interesting premise, so I decided to check it out. Now, before doing this review, I did a little bit of research into the author, Sarah J. Daly. Or I tried to anyway. I couldn't really find much, to be honest. There's her website, Sarah J. Daly Author, and the Goodreads page. And that's basically it. There really isn't that much. So it looks like she's a new author, and this is her first book. All in all, it's a good first book. Yeah. For someone who's never published anything before, this is pretty good. It's not great. It has some problems, but I would definitely probably recommend it. So if you're looking for my initial opinion without, the details, I'd probably recommend it if you're interested in the premise and you like fantasy. So with my initial impression out of the way, let's move on to the technicals. This is not a very long book. It's about 347 pages. Pretty small. All in all, nice. Nice quick read, I thought. But we're going to get to the problems in a minute, but I had some problems with it that made me kind of reluctant to keep reading. It might be me personally. I think it's a well put together world, so we're going to go ahead and move on to that. To the world. So, this is the non-spoiler section of the review. There will be a more in-depth talk about this in the spoiler section if you're interested. So, when talking about the world, the best thing I can say is that the world's ideas and the magic system it's based in are all extremely solid. In fact, I would consider this one of the top magic systems I've read in a long time. I like the magic system in most things, but a good magic system, the kind you can really dig your teeth into and speculate on all the thousands of things you can do with it, is a hard magic system. And hard and soft are usually by how defined they are. Something like Uprooted and A Deadly Education, the Scholarman series, those are very soft magic systems. There are generalizations, and you get rules for certain artifacts or spells, but there's no real rules on what a spell can be, Scholarman has it like, you need the energy to do it. Okay, but the energy requirements can be bent if you have really efficient spell work, and basically a lot of factors the audience doesn't have access to. So from an outside perspective, the user can basically do anything, especially with the main character being, one of the superpower mages. And you kind of have that in Obsidian, but the magic system is very interesting because it is specifically called blood magic. And I know some people who know a lot about fantasy will have a few different ideas of what it's about. This is really interesting. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. So, basically, some people have the potential to be blood wizards. Now, the church, it's like a magic church organization. They even call some of their higher members bishops. So there's a heavy Catholic Church analog in there that I will get into the spoiler section. And potentially, I might be reading too much into this, but an analog into the Reformation. That was weird. I might be watching too much OSP history, but I have noticed that, and I couldn't unnotice it once I made the connection. But essentially, blood mages are wizards who can cut themselves with crystal blades and The blade's quality can also affect how they're cut. They wear tattoos that help them heal faster, and by bleeding, they can access their magic. The more blood they draw, the more power they can draw out. This means there's an actual tax on their body, something we can understand as a limit to magic. Meaning, if they want to do a fireball, they still have to cut themselves. They have to let out blood. Even if their tattoos can heal them very quickly, they have to use blood to use magic. And you only have so much blood in your body. So we have basic levels of understanding on the power and scaling, and a clear understanding on the different things you could do. So there's, the fire, water, air, and earth as the core elements. You can mix them and do things with them, but those require more blood, more letting. You have to let blood from specific places in order to use certain types of magic. It's very well defined, and it's probably one of the most interesting things about the setting. All the battles have this very raw and vicious feel to them. They're quick, deadly affairs. Blood being shed. They even take advantage of the fact that, blood being shed on a blood mage is a horrible thing. So one of the characters ends up stabbing one of the attacking mages that's trying to hunt down the main characters. And he's still new to, fighting a lot of mages. And he doesn't stab them through the heart or cut off their head. So what happens is he just put a giant hole in their chest. They're gonna die, but they are bleeding everywhere. And it's not channeled through their spells, so it's very uncontrolled, but he essentially explodes in a giant fireball and nearly kills that character. It's like, oh, I understand now why mages would be like an uncontested power. Having an enemy that will almost certainly take you out with them unless you cut off their head in one blow definitely makes them hard to fight. You get a feeling as to why they've become a center of authority in this nation. Because they're really hard to deal with. The world has this interesting mythology, and I think it's all very well explained for the most part, even if it gets a little convoluted near the end. So that's all solid. I find the world, the veils that protect them from the corruption outside, this ancient war between ancient magical people who use this power of light to banish these demons, but the demons figured one final curse and destroyed most of them, along with cursing the land and blighting it. But a small group of mages have been able to raise veils, these magical bubbles, to purify internal areas. Think of them as magical biodomes, essentially. But the Brotherhood, who first raised these domes, stopped raising them after a while, and has essentially taken over as the ruling authority. And over the years, empires have taken control and lost control of this nation. But in the end, the Brotherhood remains intact. So that brings us into our story. Nice little segue. I'm trying to make that better. So, this story is about Shade Knox. Yes, that is her name. Yes, it does sound like Shadow the Shadow person. I still like her. Not a shade on her, though. Okay, that was actually unintentional, I swear. Shade Knox is basically, she was taken in by a priest of the Brotherhood Order. Females are not supposed to be taught blood wizards, even if they have the powers. Her father taught her because he recognized from a young age that she had an immense level of power and a connection to the hidden. The fifth element, essentially, allows her to draw upon nature's wrath. This makes her an ideal candidate to raise a veil, because he's basically Martin Luther, a priest who's sick of the Brotherhood's insistence on not raising a veil, and who believes they've become a bit corrupt. At first wanting to reform things from within, but eventually calling them possessed and demonic. That's where my Reformation thing came from, because it seems really on point. Except with, instead of printing the Bible, he wants her to raise a dome and essentially teach other mages how to raise them so that they can, away from the Brotherhood's greed, basically purify the entire land, or at least purify enough of it that their country can survive. Not just, live, but thrive. Which, that's a noble goal. But he also treats her terribly, and she hates him to an extent, even though she loved him. He was killed getting a hold, he was eventually the objects needed for raising one of these veils was stolen, and he was blamed because, obviously, if somebody else stole them, they're going to discover, hey, wait, you were planning to steal them too, you asshole. So he got blamed for it. She got called a witch and banished. The revolutionaries who stole them, would not help her. And in the end, she found herself alone and cast out into the waste, where she was eventually taken by this tribe who wander the waste and keep being the few remaining protective ways intact. They basically, that's their ancient duty to protect the light pathways, so they've watched over them. She's taught how crafts herself her own obsidian blades, which are supposed to grant wizards increased power, but at the cost of even lower control, which she's always had a problem with. But, she needs all the power she can if she's going to raise a veil. She finds a powerful seal master to imbue the tattoos onto her body, and then she returns to the city to aid some other nobles who are also dissatisfied with the Brotherhood in order to raise a veil. She's called an abomination, that kind of thing. And I actually really like Shade as a character. She's overpowered as hell. Like, she's easily one of those powerful people in the whole world, but everybody understands this, and they treat her as such. Plus, the magic system allows her to be both powerful and weak. Like, she can use a lot of power, but it leaves her exhausted. Even a single fight, if she unleashes her full power, she's not going to be able to just get up and fight some people immediately afterwards. And sometimes they force her to use her full power just to weaken her for secondary ways and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, so they know what they're dealing with. They're not idiots about it. There's of course one small idiot, that gets taken out in the beginning. She also meets a prince of one of the empires that has, essentially taken dominion over this area. He got exiled for, treacherous behind the scenes stuff, taking the blame for someone else's bullshit. She's working with another noble relationship. So you have sort of the, relationship triangle, which, every story has to have it. But it's actually a lot more interesting than that in a little bit. So I'll get to that later when I go into the spoiler section, because I really want to talk about her relationship for once, because they're actually doing a few interesting things here that I don't usually see. I know, my least favorite part, and it actually got me hooked on that. This story is very good when it wants to be, which is what I'm getting to. The Noble Prince is pretty good. He's basically the normal warrior. He has a mild resistance to magic, possibly due to his lineage. And that's basically how he fights. He, kind of barrels through things to get people with the sword. He's the idiot who nearly gets blown up. You have her allies from the Waste Clan. You have the noble who's helping her out named Dante. He's also a blood mage, sapphire mage, which is a really high quality blade. So, yada yada. Basically, all the characters are pretty good. They all have well distinctive personalities. I go back to them. They're just not unique. Like, none of them, aside from Shade, are really that unique, in my opinion. Aside from one other character who's a bit of a spoiler, and whose name I kind of forgot. So, basically, that's all I'm going to talk about there. I will say that this story does have some very interesting LGBTQ representation, if you're interested in that kind of thing. This story is actually pretty interesting in its depiction of it. In a few different ways. Again, I'm not exactly a good person to ask about anything sexual at all. Like, I've never had those feelings, so I'm going to go over it, but don't expect a, breathtaking viewpoint from it. But the main thing is the story just gets overcomplicated. It seems like it wants to have these twists and turns, partially just for the sake of having it. And I feel like a lot of the stuff could have just been avoided. Like, I kind of just wanted to follow Shade and her adventure, and I liked the way the story handled her as a very overpowered and very prideful character. And the way she's often used by those around her, even her allies. But at the same time, a lot of the cutaways to other stuff, while useful in setting up the world, were just so much less interesting. And a lot of this plot is literally just go here, then go back here, and then go here, and then go back here. And then we're doing this thing. No, you should do this. No, I'm going to keep doing this thing. Oh, we should actually go back and do that. But not for the reason they originally said. And it's just like, okay, story. Make up your damn mind. Choose a destination. And it's just oddly paced. Like, the battle scenes are thrilling and climactic, but then you'll just have, like, chapter after chapter of just uninteresting drama. Like, some of it's interesting. The stuff, again, most of the stuff that directly involves Shade and that she, from her perspective, is actually pretty interesting. But you're just, like, wandering around the waste where nothing's happening. It's just kind of boring. And I don't want to rag on the author too much, because again, this is her first book, and the fact that she managed to create such an interesting magic system and complex world in her first try, fantastic. I love it. I think people should read this just for details on the magic system. Those first few chapters, the battle scenes, the dark storm thing that consumed the original tribe, all of that is just fantastic. And I really feel more negative on this than I think I should be. Like, a part of me wants to give this an 8 out of 10. We're moving on to ratings. So a part of me wants to give this an 8 out of 10, and I can't. I can't even give it a 7.5. I have to give it a 7, because by the end of it, I just wanted to be done with it. Like, I just wasn't invested in the story. I was invested in Shade, but I wasn't invested in everyone else. And that was the problem. The story did not invest me in the world. It invested me in a cool magic system and a fun, interesting character that has a unique interaction with a few other characters that I didn't really care about. And I think that's its biggest problem, and why I'm going to give it a 7, is that it lacks the ability to make me personally, at least, connect with anyone other than the main character. And that's fine for an okay book. But a good book should make you... It should make you become invested in the other people in the story. Or at the very least, a handful of other people. The Inherent Cycle didn't just make you interested in Aragon and Saphira. It made you invested in Nazuada. It made you invested in Roran. It made you invested in Murtok. It made you invested in Orin. You had His Majesty's Dragon series. You became interested in Granby and Iskerika. Timorous Flight. Captain Roland. Yeah. You became invested in all the other dragons. You became invested in one of the princes of China in one of the books. Like, you could get invested in other characters. And I feel like this book lacks that ability. And I can't necessarily, point to something and say, that right there, that was what made it not connect to me. I just don't. I don't know what's about these characters is making me... If I had to say something, and I'm reviewing it, so I guess I do, I would say they feel paper thin. Shade gets her whole backstory fleshed out, but everyone else gets, your one-line doggerel. You have, a paragraph. Explain what you're about. The whole thing with the prince is, revealed, he took the fall for his brother or whatever, and it's not really a major spoiler. It comes out pretty early. But it's just, he always felt paper thin. There wasn't that much more to him than that. I will say I remember Dante. And I remember him because he actually got delved into a lot more, and how he got roped into the same conspiracy and betrayals that Shade did. And I kind of felt invested with him. I won't lie. So, it got me invested in Dante, but everyone else was just a non-factor. And again, Dante and Shade are not the only characters. There are other points in the story where you had to care about these other characters. And I just couldn't. So, as much as it pains me, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. I think you should read it. If you're interested in fantasy with unique worlds and cool magic systems, this will be a ride. Even if you don't finish the ride, I think you'll at least enjoy the first few loops. So you can try it out. Maybe it'll be more your thing than mine. If not, that's okay. I don't think this book is for everyone, but it definitely has some cool ideas. And you know what? If the author wants to make another book, I'm probably going to keep an eye out for her. If Sarah J. Daly makes another book, I will most certainly have an eye on it. If the description catches my eye, I'm going to read that thing. Because I know she can make a really good world. I know she can make a cool magic system. I know she can do good characters. And I want to see her improve. I want to see her writing get better. Because I think if she works on this, her books could be fantastic. So yeah. I'm going to end this with a 7 out of 10. And we're going to move on to the spoiler section now. If you just want to know if you should have read this or not, you can go ahead and click off now. I would really like if you could stay, but if you don't want spoilers, go ahead and go. Don't worry. It's cool. Alright, everyone gone who doesn't want spoilers? Okay, we're moving on. So, where to start? Okay, let's start with Shade and the LGBTQ stuff I mentioned earlier. So, Shade originally got her blades forged with her father, I believe, and then she had to go out to the waste alone. Now, she couldn't exactly use a lot of her magic because she didn't have the tattoos that allow your skin to heal. And without it, using even a single minor spell can, leave you in stitches for days. So she had to seek out a tattoo artist to do it. None of the people in the community she joined could make tattoos strong enough for the type of magic she was going to be doing. So she sought out a tattoo of this faraway people who live on the outskirts, even beyond their ring. And she found this woman. The woman had apparently been waiting for her, aware of her existence, because the fun fact is, everyone knew from an early age that Shade was dangerous. After her whole thing with the priest, every major faction knew how dangerous she was and started planning around her as their new linchpin or troublemaker or problem or issue or ultimate weapon. And they're basically all essentially fucking with her life from moment one. So her entire life has essentially been people want her for her power, which I find a interesting dynamic, actually, for a character. Especially for one so prideful and fiercely independent in personality as Shade, especially as she figures out. So this tattoo artist waited for her and did her tattoos and worked over her tirelessly and sort of forged a relationship with her over those few days. And Shade began to love her, like fall in actual love with her. They had a night of passion, and then this person just vanished, just gone. Shade was obviously distressed and even essentially threw her own personal goal of raising the veil off to the side for a moment to find her. And she did, only to find out this woman had a husband and a son. And the anguish when Shade describes this is just like this moment of, I was a fool, I can't believe I was that stupid. And it's like, wow, that must just suck. Like, this person... Because she apparently had treated Shade nicer than anyone else she had done. She had a connection with her that Shade could not do. And what we end up learning is just makes this even just more of a gut punch, honestly. But essentially, Shade devoted herself after that point to growing strong enough in order to raise a veil and went back to the main city, years later. After hooking up with Dante and her new allies, he tells her that one of his servants has actually been working with the guild group, the anti-guild group that basically left her out to die. She went to them because they're like an underground resistance of sorts and begged them for sanctuary so she wouldn't be forced out of the Veil and into the wilds with, the corrupting magic that would with monsters devouring her alive. And they turned her away. Now, it's later revealed they did that so she would grow, to see if she would be strong enough to raise a veil. Basically a trial by fire. And she tells them, "You're assholes. I can't believe you threw me to the wolves like that." Which, fair response. And then they revealed they were the ones who stole the magical relics that got her father killed. The father who might have been an asshole, but was still the nicest person she had at that point, and the only person who was willing to protect and care for her. Even if it was just to use her as a weapon against the Brotherhood. So she suddenly realizes not only did they essentially kill her father, and steal what should have been hers because her father had basically been promising these things to her since, she was old enough to understand. They also then, knowing they wanted to use her later, threw her to the wolves just to see if she would be a good enough weapon. And this is a recurring theme with her. Like, her father only took her in as an adopted daughter just to make sure he'd have a weapon against the Order because he believed they're corrupt. Then the Resistance got him killed to use her as a weapon. Now, by this point, though, Shade had some kind of vision that showed that she was going to build a veil somewhere else. And she thought this was a vision from the hidden goddess, or the hidden gods. And so she became very stubborn when they told her to build a veil at the Nexus, basically where all the magical light paths are the only safe way to travel and are tended to by her guild, who she's trying to raise a veil for, so they'll have a place to safely live, because the wilds are getting even more dangerous and full of shadow storms and monsters that almost kill them in the beginning. So she tells them no. She threatens to overwhelm them and bring the guards down on them if they don't give her the thing. So she takes the stones she needs to raise a veil and leaves them. Because they were kind of assholes. But she is becoming very obsessed on this vision. Well, guess what the visions reveal to be? No, it's not the demons that did all this nonsense, although they are still lurking around there with the, Brotherhood. Since she's been out with the wilds with her protective clan, she's actually one of the few people, one of the few high-ranking mages that's actually clear of their influence, because she was never really with the Brotherhood. Only her father was, and he hated everything they were about. No, they've been secretly infesting the church over the years. No. She gets there, finds out this was all a secret test to get her to join up with the remnants of that ancient race that fought the demons so long ago, which basically turns out her tattoo artist was a member of. And she didn't have a husband or a son. She just needed Shade to not be attached to her, so she could go out and do what she was supposed to do, which was actually come back here once she had the fake rocks, because these are diluted ones that were created due to basically a bastardization of the veil technique that was designed by the demons to grow weaker and weaker over time as they influenced the church, so that the veils would eventually fail catastrophically and release them from their prison, which this ancient race has been tending to all over the years. So no, they reveal that the stones actually have a price. You have to literally dig them out of your body, and lesser mages will actually die just from making one of the stones. Now, Shade might be able to survive, but it's probably going to cost her her life. But at this point, she's just sick and tired of it. And the worst part is, it turns out that vision was not a vision from a god. It was a vision from the Skagari woman who she fell in love with, that planted the idea so she would come to them, they could explain how she could sacrifice herself from them, and then they could send her off to do it at the Nexus where they actually do need to raise the barrier. So let me reiterate. Her father basically adopted her just because she had strong magic so she could raise a veil, got killed when another group decided they wanted to raise a veil, but when their original blood mage they wanted to do this with failed, died due to tragedy, they decided to send her out to the wilds where she very might have died if she had hesitated even a moment in her life. Then when she came back, they wanted her to side with them and help them under their authority and raise a veil under their orders, not for her new tribe, but for them. And then, when she ends up taking them to follow the vision that the gods showed her because she believes that's what's right, it turns out another group was manipulating her all along. She's basically a WMD that gets constantly told by other people what to do her whole life. And it really starts to piss her off. And you really feel for her because when she first appears, you're like, oh man, she's such this strong, mage with, she knows everything about the ways she's lived out there, even though she doesn't have the same magic control over the light pathways. She's managed to survive and protect, and she even protects her, village and knows what's best for them and tells them she's going to raise a veil even though they think it's all foolish. And it turns out she's been manipulated and lied to her entire life by anyone she's been, did not hesitate to trust. Anyone she has not hesitated to trust has in some way, shape, or form betrayed her. And you just feel bad for her by the end. It's just brutal. Even Dante also feels that way. It's when he realizes all the shit that's gone down, and he realizes even one of the people in the members of the Resistance knew that she was going to die raising a veil because he's actually been working sort of against and sort of with his old group who he left because he thought they weren't taking a proactive enough approach. Basically, he thinks that Shade she's not going to be powerful enough to raise a veil, but when she fails to raise a veil that strong, the fallout will destroy all the other veils and force everyone to actually fight the demons instead of just cowering away from them. So to him, it's a win-win. Either she somehow miraculously is strong enough to raise a veil, and the new sanctuary in the Nexus reinforces all the old ones and allows for new veils to be raised, thus basically creating a cycle where the demons are going to be on the downturn again, or all the veils shatter, and we have to fight a new demon war, which is, not so great, but hey, it's part of his plan. Which, again, is just another layer of manipulation in all this. We're operating on 5 layers of manipulation here, and it's just getting ridiculous. And you suddenly realize, after his betrayal, when he, reveals himself to Dante, and Dante's like, we're gonna go find Shade and tell her so she actually knows what the hell she's getting into, even though she has a pretty good idea at this point. Because you sort of realize, along with Dante, that every major faction, after her father found her and started using her for his own game, realized how powerful she was and decided, you're how we're gonna fix our problems. The demon controlling the Brotherhood wants to use her in a fail case to start that war that the other Skari mage, the ancient mage race, wants to do too. He's also using her for that. There are literally 5 factions doing this. It's insanely complicated and kind of hilarious. And by the end, Shade actually manages to manifest a new veil and barely survives the process, although there's a lot of weird magic stuff that I'm not going to get into with that. But she survives, she raises the veil, and she essentially says, no, this is for my people. I raised it for them. I will raise others once I am well enough. But for now, leave me the hell alone. So she gets like a sort of a happy ending with Dante. But like, honestly, if we get a sequel to this, she's gonna be bitter. Like, if she's not bitter, I'm surprised. It's just, oh my god. Can you imagine? Every person saying that you're an abomination and a traitor, only to find out that every single one of them was hedging their bets on you. It's just, they're all hypocrites. Every single one of them, without fail. It is so ridiculous. And honestly, Shade is just kind of pissed with the girl she fell in love with. It's like, do you know how horrible I felt after finding you with that caravan and you telling me I had a husband and a son only after I professed my undying love to you, only to find out that was all a lie, and you just need me to focus on doing the one thing I was ever supposed to do for you people, because that's all you see me as. All you people see me as is the potential to either raise a barrier successfully and ensure world peace, or fail to raise a barrier so we can get the war starting. That's literally the only thing everyone wants from her. And it just, I love her. I love her as a character. Like, she does genuinely get pissed at them for this, because yeah, it turns out when everyone's trying to manipulate you as some kind of chosen one, it sucks. Oh, it was like so cathartic by the end. It's just like you get why Dante, and I like how Dante actually like loves her for her. And he's like, look, I know the, resistance group kicked you out, but we're trying to do this for the greater good, for your clan, for my clan, for everyone in this country. And Shay just like, no one's no part. She doesn't even want to work with the resistance group when they first find out about that first twist. That one of his servants is a member. But once he finds out that the servant is using her in a way that she might get killed over, he's like, I was willing to do this for the greater good, but I will not sacrifice Shade. Every other person has freaking sacrificed her like a martyr that she has never asked to be. And I will not participate in this anymore. And it's like, yeah, that's what an actual friend does. So that's one of the reasons I actually liked and think and remember Dante's, because he felt like a real person who just got sick of it. Like, he convinced himself for a long time, I will do horrible things for the greater good, for the greater good, for the greater good. And then eventually, that greater good did not add up to how horrible they were being, and how personal the price would be. So I like that. It's a very human turn for him. But this book was fun. If only because I was just kept waiting. It's like, did they also want to use Shade for their own? It's like, yeah, if you're like a walking nuke, I guess everybody does want to influence how you think. Oh god, that ending was just, that moment where they get to the valley and they learn what the hell's going on. Very tragic for one of her companions, but like still, ugh. See, I'm very excited about this, because when this book gets good, it gets really good. It's just, there's a lot of downtime and dull bits in between it, and I just could not get through those easily. I had to put this down for like days at a time just to get through this. So there's a reason it's 7 out of 10, but I did have a lot I enjoyed here, which is why I'm still recommending it to you guys. Like, a 7 for me, so my scale is sort of a, like, exponential growth as you get closer to 10 and 1, or logarithmic as you get closer to 10 and 1. Like, a 1 for me is a unfunctional work. I don't think I'm going to run into a published book that's unfunctional. I might run into I've definitely run into some 1 out of 10 fan fictions, but like, or online stories, because that has a low barrier to entry. But a published book is usually has to, they have standards, like there are base standards. So, the only thing I can think of in recent memory that's been a 1 out of 10 is Fan 4 Stick. So, I have, like, 4 and below is literally, this has major systemic problems that don't just make it a bad subjective book for me, but objectively a terrible piece of writing. And I just don't run into many things like that in book form. Like, as a published book, you just don't run into many things like that. So, that's why it's a 7. It's how I grade things. A 7 means I'd probably recommend, if you're interested in this kind of thing, go check it out. 8 is usually like, if I, recommend, if you like this thing, definitely check it out. And if you don't like this thing, you might want to give it a try, because this one does something really interesting. 9 is like, okay, you should all be going to see this. This is really good. 10 is like, why have you not already seen this? So a 7 is still a good grade for me. I still think it's a good book. It does specific things well, it's a pretty good example of the genre. All in all, yeah. So I kind of ranted a little bit more vaguely about this one. It's just that a lot of the details fail to stick in my mind here. And you guys know I'm usually all about those weird little details. But aside from what I've mentioned, I just can't think of anything else. So I guess we're going to end the spoiler talk. It has been wonderful talking to you guys again. And I will see you on Friday for The Bad Guys. That's that new DreamWorks movie that has that cool animation style. I love that they're taking cues from Spider-Verse, so everything that doesn't look like a freaking Pixar movie. Like, don't get me wrong, I like Pixar movies. I just wish their style hadn't infected all of animation for a decade or two. Oh, God, they've been doing it for 2 decades. Anyway, see you guys next time. Bye. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and thank you for listening to the Dragon's Library. Please subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes. The Dragon's Library releases new episodes Tuesday and Friday each week, and you can follow us on Twitter at dragon_library2. If you want to suggest an episode topic, my email is in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for all your support.